We'll start by getting you the inside track on the big cabinet reshuffle, which has political circles all across the country abuzz. The winter ahead awaits a major shake-up of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's union cabinet. The mega cabinet facelift is slated to take place on the 9th of this month. Sources say the cabinet is likely to see an expansion with up to 10 new ministers being inducted, as the president cabinet has several ministers who've got dual responsibilities, and the Prime Minister wants them to focus on one ministry each. Top of the list of the likely inductees is Goa Chief Minister Manohar Parrikar, who may get the defence portfolio. Sources say he's not particularly inclined on coming to Delhi, but if pushed and pressed by the Prime Minister, is likely to accept the post of Defence Minister. He could ease Arun Jaitley's burden, who currently handles both finance and defence. Apart from that, there is also Suresh Prabhu, who is with the Shiv Sena, but is someone the BJP and especially the Prime Minister likes very much. They're keen to see him in the union cabinet. That might not go down particularly well with Uddhav Thackeray. There's also Babul Supriyo from West Bengal, who might be considered. Apart from that, Jayant Sinha likely to be brought in as a Minister of State for Finance. Jharkhand likely to see its first MP become a minister. Then more ministers coming in from Rajasthan, and also a possible Jat minister from Haryana. I want to go across to TV Today's consulting editor Rajdeep Sardesai, who understands and knows Manohar Parrikar and his politics very intimately. Rajdeep, what's your sense? Will Parrikar be willing to give up his plum portfolio of Chief Minister Goa, come to Delhi, which a city he doesn't like particularly, and take over as Defence Minister?
I think he will be left with very little choice. I think if you are being offered the Defence Ministry, which is one of the top 4 portfolios, then to say no to it is extremely unlikely. I know that Mr. Parrikar is someone who has in the past been reluctant to move to Delhi. If you remember, his name has been in the past cited as a potential BJP president. At the time, there was a controversy over certain comments that he had made. There was also a feeling that he came from a small state and therefore could he be BJP president. But he is seen as among the few in the party who combines 2 qualities that Modi appreciates. He's extremely efficient, and he's got a strong sense of personal integrity in terms of his honesty quotient, both of which are critical, the government believes, for the defence portfolio. Given what's happened in the past, the scandals over defence deals, A.K. Antony, of course, also had a reputation for being an honest man, but his efficiency was questioned. Mr. Parrikar, therefore, I think Rahul may well be tempted, provided it is the Defence Ministry. No other portfolio, my senses, will bring him away from Goa, a state that he's been... he runs it really very, very firmly. He's called Chota Modi by some in Goa. So he would ideally, like to move to Delhi only if he's getting one of the top 4 portfolios, if that is defence. Otherwise, I think he will try and remain in Goa. That's my sense.
Stay with us, Rajdeep. This is what Manohar Parrikar told reporters after leaving the Prime Minister's residence this evening.
Speculation that you might come to Delhi in a different role in the union cabinet.
I said I have not discussed, or he has not discussed anything about that with me. So as of now, the issue is dead. The news is dead.
Very careful there. As of now, the issue is dead. The news is there, but I'm not talking to the Prime Minister about this just yet. There is also Suresh Prabhu. Now, apparently, Rajdeep, there were 3 lists that were made out. Suresh Prabhu featured in at least 2 of those lists. The PM, we know, likes him very much, but he comes from the Shiv Sena. Can the Prime Minister, at a time when relations with the Shiv Sena are not very good, bring Suresh Prabhu on board, regardless of what Uddhav Thackeray might think about this?
My sense is that he won't bring him as a minister. There's been talk that Suresh Prabhu will be put in charge of a committee that will then look at revamping the Planning Commission, much more in the role of an advisor. And he, as you rightly said, is going to the G20 summit with the Prime Minister. That's the role in which I think Mr. Suresh Prabhu can be accommodated at the centre, more in the role of an advisor. Minister, unlikely, given what has been happening with the Shiv Sena. Mr. Prabhu's own relations with the Shiv Sena are rather prickly at the moment. He doesn't even really see himself, I think, anymore as a full-time Shiv Sainik. And therefore, unlikely. The other names that you've been mentioning, I think the 2 names that seem more likely are Jayant Sinha. in the context of Minister of State for Finance, someone who's had experience in the financial sector, comes from the private sector in finance. Yashwant Sinha's son, which was seen as one reason why he wasn't made a minister, because Mr. Modi didn't want to make the sons and daughters of politicians ministers in his first government. But I think he is the kind who might reduce the burden on Mr. Jaitley in the finance ministry. Manohar Parrikar, though, is the more interesting choice, because if he is brought in, it suggests that the BJP is drawing in from the state units as well, and that perhaps reveals the fact that at the centre they don't have the kind of faces that the Prime Minister would like to have as part of his close cabinet.
Jharkhand, Bihar, Rajasthan, Haryana, those are some of the states we're being told whose MPs could feature on the expanded cabinet list. But Rajdeep, what's your sense of the broad message that Prime Minister Narendra Modi would be sending through this cabinet reshuffle? He's got ministers who are doubling up, are burdened with 2 portfolios. Some of them may lose their portfolio. But what's the larger message the Prime Minister is likely to send out?
Look, my sense is very clear. There are 2 messages that are coming out if this is the reshuffle that takes place. One, I think the Prime Minister recognizes that perhaps in his first cabinet he's burdened a few individuals with too much of work. He needs to reduce that burden. So I think that is the major reason for this reshuffle. The second, I think, somewhere is that even this Prime Minister knows that he will have to accommodate certain interests, whether from Bengal, you mentioned Babul Supriyo, whether from Jharkhand, which is going to the polls, whether Haryana, where the BJP just won. I think there will be that accommodation, but I think the main factor will be to fill in those key portfolios which are seen to be burdened. Defence, I think Arun Jaitley handling both finance and defence in the run-up to the budget in February seems unlikely. So I think that's the key portfolio. Again, Nirmala Sitharaman has more than one portfolio on her hand. She needs to have her burden lessened. And there has been some griping within the organization of people who believe they have the experience but have been left out. So I think there will be a bit of accommodation, but mainly sending out the message that we want to have the right people in the right place.
There's also no other window of opportunity available, because soon after next week, the Prime Minister first goes to Australia for the G20 summit, then he's in Fiji, and then he goes to Nepal for the SAARC summit. And before that, the Parliament session of the winter session's already begun. So there's very little window of opportunity. Rajdeep Sardesai, for joining us with your thoughts on the top of Centre Stage tonight. Thank you very much. Let's move on to other big story. Headlines today has been able to scoop the first report of the Special Investigation Team on black money. The revelations of the probe panel confirm the worst fears in the black money chase. The SIT reveals that out of the 628 names in the black money list, as many as 289 account holders have no amounts mentioned against their names. This could mean that there is no trace of money held by these 289 people in offshore accounts. The question then is, why were these people allowed to take their money out in the first place? Who gave them a heads up? And was this part of a larger political conspiracy to ensure that the black money account holders were not nabbed? The SIT, in its maiden report, has also asked the government to renegotiate and amend the double taxation avoidance agreement. The probe body says the amendment should address the main issue of sharing information on Indian account holders in offshore bank accounts. The report says that Swiss authorities have not been cooperating and not providing information which would enable them to move fast on bringing back black money. The SIT says enforcement agencies must be enabled to use information to try and tax those who hold accounts but did not declare it. The cases being probed by the SIT are the ones whose data was shared by the CBI and are being probed by the Central Board of Direct Taxes. The SIT report estimates that illicit financial flows in India are to the tune of $343 billion. This is coming from an expert committee report that presented its findings before the SIT. $343 billion between 2002 to 2011. I want to go across to Ashish Mehrishi, our correspondent who broke this story. Ashish, we've been going through this report very, very closely. The most startling thing is that the biggest case currently under investigation is a case of a Ponzi scheme where money was sent apparently to Australia, but this case is to the tune of 650 crore rupees. So when Baba Ramdev says there's $1 trillion of black money, each of us will get 15 lakh rupees if this black money comes in. MB Shah and Justice Pasayat haven't been able to find the quantum of black money that Baba Ramdev and everybody else in the BJP had been banding about in the months leading up to the general elections.
Very true, Rahul. In fact, if you go through this report, the entire investigation looks like a sham. In fact, if you go through the investigation report of HSBC account, it says out of 628 people, and they've broken this into 613 individuals and 50 non-individuals. 339 accounts have got money against their name, but 289 people, it is zero balance. Now, surprisingly, if a list has come from the French government, which is supposed to be a stolen list, which was stolen by her Falciani, it is very surprising. How can you have a zero balance in that list? Now, the big question, Rahul, is, was this manufactured that 289 people will have zero balance? Or, how can somebody have a zero balance in HSBC Geneva-based account? Now, these questions need to be answered, and also this report questions on the way the entire investigation has happened. They said the government, the double taxation avoidance agreement that they have signed, they said it is actually useless, because unless they find out whether the money, how that money landed, whether there is a predicate offence or not, that needs to be investigated. They said, please go renegotiate and get an amended double taxation avoidance agreement. So this first report that is in our hand, Rahul, very clearly reveals that the Indian government is not going to get much as far as the information that they actually have till now.
What is also perplexing for me is that the SIT on black money is essentially looking at what the CBDT is doing. It's looking also at what the CBI has done so far. And in most of those cases, letter-rogatories have been sent to countries like Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia. You're asking for information. That information hasn't come. So if you actually see what the SIT has been able to achieve so far, it's not very much. So even when the final report comes, unless things change and change very dramatically, Prime Minister Modi's promise of bringing black money back to India is highly unlikely to be fulfilled.
Well, there are 2-3 things, Rahul, we have to look at. Whether is it the only list, is it the only data that the Indian government has? Till now, this is the only list that has been shared with the Supreme Court as well as the SIT. Now, as far as this data goes, they say 289 do not have any money, and 122 are repeat entries. So what are you left with? Around 200 names only that you're investigating? And then what is the quantum of money that you're going to get back? There is a big question mark on that. Then the CBI, because there are 9 members into the SIT, which involves CBI Director, Director of Revenue Intelligence, ED Director. The CBI has shared cases, around 9 cases, on how the money has been siphoned off, including the PACL, the Ponzi scheme. Then there are other cases of DSQ software. But those are all old cases, which is actually in the public domain. There is nothing new in this report. Now, this is the first report, if you remember.
This is the first report, Ashish.
This is the first.
When does the report get completed? When does the second and the final report come out?
No, the Supreme Court has asked them, the SIT, to file a final report by November. Because first of all, the important portion here is, Rahul, that the amendment to the Income Tax Act was made where you can open cases 16 years down the line because of this list only. Earlier you could reopen cases up to 6 years only, but then the 16-year case clause was inserted inside the Income Tax Act just to investigate this list. But then what are you investigating? Only 200 names or so, and what is the amount of money that you will get? Now, you have to complete the investigation. The CBDT has to complete the investigation by March 2015. Else, this list becomes redundant, because then the Act does not allow them to investigate.
Well,
and then here, this SIT says there should be a nodal agency like the Enforcement Directorate to investigate into this matter. But surprisingly, the CBDT is not ready to share the data with anyone else.
Well,
now, this is very, very surprising.
How little can be expected to emerge from the SIT on black money when the final report comes out. There might not be any new revelations that the SIT has, but that's because they haven't been able to get their hands on any fresh cases. They're looking only at what the CBI and the CBDT already have on their table. To be able to scoop this is a big story indeed. My congratulations to you, Ashish Mehrishi. We hope that when the final report is out, you're the one who'll bring it for our viewers first. Thank you very much for the time being. Let's move on, to our next story tonight. Eyeing a massive turnaround of sorts in the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly polls, the BJP is aiming to repeat its performance from Maharashtra and Haryana. I caught up this afternoon with BJP General Secretary Ram Madhav, and he says that the party is well on its way to achieve its Mission 44. He's accepted for the first time that he met with Kashmiri leader Sajjad Lone and has not ruled out the possibility of the BJP tying up with those forces in the valley that are pro-democracy and anti the family-based parties of Kashmir. Here is Ram Madhav sharing for the first time in public the BJP's strategy for Mission 44. There's a battle in Delhi, there's a battle in Jharkhand, but the one battle with international ramifications is your Mission Kashmir. Is this just a slogan to try and up the morale of your cadre on the ground, or do you believe this is actually doable?
We are serious about it. Jammu Kashmir needs and deserves a real good government today, and only we, the BJP, with some friends in Jammu and in the valley, can offer such a government which is development oriented, which is not plagued by the kind of things that the state is facing all these years in last 2 decades, like nepotism, family wad, bhrashtachar, corruption. We are the real and most available alternative before the people of Jammu and Kashmir, and I have been to the state several times in the last 2 months, and I believe that people of the state also believe in the same way.
The demographics of Jammu and Kashmir are biased against your party. You can win Jharkhand, you can do well in Maharashtra, you can do well in Haryana, but the voting pattern of the valley especially and the number of seats in the valley would indicate that if looked at purely electorally, the BJP stands no hope of being able to touch the magic figure of 44. What exactly is your strategy, Mr. Madhav?
Rahul, strategy is never discussed in TV studios. But having said, I will only say one thing. We will overcome all these, perceived hurdles like demographics, religious composition. When you say demographics, that's what you mean, I know. We will overcome all these things because today Prime Minister Modi enjoys huge support from across the cross-section of the people in the valley, in Jammu, in Ladakh, everywhere. People look up to him with great hope, and I am sure under his leadership we will overcome all these things.
You said that you hope to do well in the valley with the help of your friends in the Kashmir valley. Who are your friends in the Kashmir valley?
Whoever is willing to stand up to the misrule of NC and PDP in all these years, who is ready to stand up to these two families, politically ready to challenge them, we welcome all of them to come forward. We all have to join hands to defeat these two parties.
Chairman of the People's Conference, Sajjad Lone, has given an interview in which he says that Ram Madhav came and met with me. What was your meeting with Sajjad Lone about?
Now see, we meet with many people. I have met with several others also in the valley. So it is a process. When elections happen, you do meet people, you look for friends, you try to understand local political realities.
Lone as a friend?
As I said, we also try to understand local political realities. We look for different forces which can stand up to these two parties.
So you are essentially trying to prop up the People's Conference as a counter to the PDP and the National Conference. Is that what you're saying?
You must remember that all these people are leaders in their own right. They have their own following. They have their own standing in the valley. To say that we are trying to prop up anybody is totally incorrect. But yes, all good people who believe in democracy, who believe in electoral politics for the development of the state, they have an opportunity to come forward. Today, this election offers an excellent opportunity.
So you think Sajjad Lone is a good person?
No, as long as he believes in the electoral process,
sure, of course he does.
as long as he believes in the electoral process, and as long as he is ready to take on the two parties there, which are the main reason behind the backwardness and the pitiable condition of the Jammu and Kashmir state today, he should be supported.
So let me try and paraphrase this, because he is opposed to both Mehbooba and Omar, and he is willing to consider fighting these elections. So you're saying the BJP is not averse to supporting, not propping up, but to support and enable Sajjad Lone's fight against the two family-held parties of the Kashmir Valley. Is that what I'm understanding you?
For your information, we are going to have our own candidates in his own seat also. BJP also is contesting the seats. But I am only saying that we need more and more people who probably have been following a separatist path earlier to use this opportunity to come forward and join the political mainstream.
And you're willing to consider a post-poll alliance with him?
What happens after the polls, we have to wait and see. I mean, it all depends on.
But you're not ruling it out. You're not ruling it out. You're not ruling it out.
No, as I said, post-poll things we will discuss only after the poll
Sure,
results.
but you're not ruling it out. So you're okay with the idea of allying with a separatist leader if he's contesting in the electoral process and if he's opposed to Mehbooba and Omar. That's what I've understood you say.
No, what is your criteria for a separatist leader? Somebody who is participating in your own election process, who wants to join political mainstream, who wants to become an MLA, who wants to work for the development of the state. If you want to call him separatist leader, what are the definitions of these words? First of all, you have to decide.
Does the BJP intend to install a Hindu chief minister in Jammu and Kashmir?
Jammu and Kashmir's chief minister will be a voter, a representative of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. People like you may see the religion and caste of each person, but we see him as the legitimately elected person in the elections and elected by the legislators of the state.
Okay. You went to Kashmir recently, you travelled. What was the feedback that you got? Because people were very angry with the floods and the response of the state government, especially after those floods. And Umar said that this is not the right time to be doing politics in the Kashmir Valley at all.
People of the valley are certainly very unhappy with the way the post-flood situation was handled by the state government. Government of India has tried to extend support to them to the extent possible, and it will continue to do that. And there is, so far the relief activity has been completed. The major work of rehabilitation is there, that will be taken up soon. People are fed up with the state government, not just because of the post-flood handling, but also the misrule in last 6 years. And they also see a great hope in Prime Minister Modi's vision, his programs, the way he offered his support to the state by going there on the Diwali day and spending the day with the people, affected people there. People have great hope in Prime Minister Modi's leadership.
If you fall short of a majority, would the BJP be willing to tie up with the PDP in a post-poll scenario to come together, a big rally from Jammu, a big party from Jammu, a big party from Kashmir coming together to form a government?
Don't worry, we will have enough numbers to form the government in the state without PDP or NC support.
That was Ram Madhav, the BJP exceedingly charged up. They're quite confident that they can pull off a very difficult victory in Jammu and Kashmir. We're slipping into a quick break. When we come back, we get you exclusive excerpts of an interview